God can come with you into the marketplace, even if it's not in a church, even if you're not in a ministry role. You can work in a regular business in the market that isn't part of a church or isn't part of a religious organization.
I felt like a failure. I felt like I had everything. I had, almost the ideal upbringing, upper middle class. Dad's a dentist in Alaska. I've had all these great life experiences. Go to great school. All these things that I should be a success.
And what's your role today?
So I am president. So I basically do all the office. So I lead the estimating. We have an estimator, and I do all the accounting. So my dad passed away about 10 years ago from cancer. And what I realized is for all the great things he did and all the involvement in the business and all the stuff, the people that were with him at the end and where the real impact was the people that God put right next to him. I would say if God put me on this earth, he said, who are the people you're closest to, the most impact on? It's not going to be this periphery vendor, maybe your employees, it's your family and your partner.
100%.
If I walk off this earth tomorrow, who are the 5 people, what are they going to say about me? When we went to Ethiopia, it was just a whole different paradigm of poverty.
Welcome back to Built on Purpose, episode 4, where we're going to talk about business and faith in the same conversation. Today, as I was thinking about today and kind of leading into what's going on in the world that we're a part of, I hear this constant discussion about work-life balance, and I just laugh because I think that our society has really gotten down this expectation that we're supposed to have these cutoffs in very specific lanes, and we have a certain amount of time that has to be allocated to both every single day. And I've lived this world long enough and run enough businesses and been a part of the marketplace to realize that's just not going to happen. And I think when we set that expectation, the emotions run high and our bucket gets drained. And I've heard an alternative phrase that I think is more applicable, which is work-life harmony. When you think about the intentionality of life, when you've got work and there's some serious stuff at the office and you've got clients with a need, you have to go all in. Like that's 100% in on work. And those days are going to happen. We go through seasons in life, and there's times though where your wife, your kids, they need you all in. And so your business needs to take a back seat. And I think that's where work-life harmony really comes in. And, when you start everything with the mission, vision, and values that you stand for, when those days come, it's easy to identify when it's time to give your wife and your kids and your family everything that you've got and let your business just continue to move in the background. And then when there's times where your clients need you and there's things that are going on in work where it's going to be a problem if you ignore it, you need to give that everything you've got to. And if you've got a foundational principle that you stand for, I think it's very easy to do that when the challenges hit you, because you can take a step back and run it through that filter and make those decisions. And I think that the reason that was heavy on my heart and why it's something that I think God leads today's episode to be about is the guest today. He's been in the industry a long time, been in business for a long time. He's got a story from Alaska, which will be fun to hear about. And he's got 5 kids and a wife, and he's got a success story that I think you're going to be excited about. So today's episode is Jacob Cook, owner of Glacier Construction, and I'm excited to have him on. And Jacob, it's good to have you here, man.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I appreciate you.
Yeah, so let's start with your story. Let's back up a bit. You were born in Alaska, so that's a big thing, right? And so you've got a lot of backstory from that. And then you've been in a variety of different places with school and business. Yeah. And, we got a chance to chat a little bit. Hunter's the one that introduced us from Strata Accounting. So tell me about your backstory. Let's start there.
Yeah. So actually born in Montana, but
I was
like 9 years old, my dad was a little bit of an adventurer. He was a dentist. Okay. And he's like, I'm just going to go and pack up and move to Alaska. It was kind of a bold thing. So it was pretty interesting. We had a unique childhood, and that's actually where the Glacier Construction inspiration comes from, because we're surrounded by glaciers. And so I grew up in Juneau, Alaska.
Cool.
Pretty much, not born but raised there, and it was a really cool experience because you're out in the middle of the wilderness, and so we're. Some of the stories growing up there is different than you might hear coming.
I could imagine. I've never been, but I've heard it's beautiful. I've always wanted to go.
Yeah.
But it's not an easy trip to pull off when you live in Illinois.
Yeah, correct. But there's a lot of people that go up there. That's kind of a destination. So when I go back there, I get to be the Midwest tourist, but also kind of the local at heart. So it's kind of fun. Yeah. But so we went grew up, pretty much in June, Alaska, and I went to school there and had a really cool, I'd say, idyllic childhood growing there. And then, I think there's some experiences there that were pretty unique for, I guess, someone in my position. So when I was in high school, I did an exchange student to Japan.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. And then when I went to school, I came back here to the Midwest, and so that's where I met my wife. She's from just up the road in Algonquin. So that's
very cool. Very cool.
Settled here. So that's kind of like the grow up backstory is Alaska. And
what's your favorite memory from being a kid in Alaska?
oh my gosh! So this this is the funniest story I always tell everybody. So when I was in middle school, so we live, Juneau, Alaska is this long stretch of highway that's right on the water, and it's just like a really long, big town. And so you could drive for like 50 miles in either direction. You're just going off into nowhere. But it's landlocked, so you can't escape from, it's either boat or plane. So the furthest end of town is like a 50-mile drive. And so my dad took my brother and I out hunting. It was like a Sunday night, and it was middle of summer, so the sunlight's out till it's about this time of year.
Yeah.
It's like 20 hours of sunlight.
Yeah.
And we're duck hunting.
Okay.
And so the way that duck hunting works is you have these kind of like so the road, and then there's a little bit of forest kind of that you have to hike through, and then you get out to these big marshlands where
That's awesome.
it's almost like a river delta. And we went out there, and it was a beautiful 80-degree summer day, which is really unusual there. And we hike around. We got probably 15 or 20 ducks, and it was super bright out. It was like 8 or 9, and usually the light's till about 11 or 12. And my dad's like, we better get back because we don't know if we're gonna, you don't want to get too late. And even a short hike through the woods, a mile, you just don't want to mess around because Alaska can get dangerous.
I've heard
pretty
stories.
quick.
Yep, I've heard stories.
So here, the three of us go out there. We're hauling our ducks, and it's starting to get dark, and we get into the woods, and all of a sudden, it just was really dark because you think it's twilight, and we kind of get turned around, and my brother steps into a little sinkhole through his waders and gets swamped. So he's drudging along and kind of complaining, and we're trying to make it through, and we get turned around, and we're like, uh-oh. And so my dad, he's a pretty savvy hunter. He says, we're done. We're stopping here. We're not wandering around getting more lost. And so the three of us were like, what do we do? We have our guns, but it's probably 10 o'clock now, and it's totally dark. Oh, wow. He goes, so we're laying down. So we lay down the ducks like a bed of down feathers, basically, and we all huddle up, and we're kind of sitting in my dad's arms with our guns in the pitch black, sitting on raw meat in the middle of Alaska forest in the middle of the night. And so we're sitting there, and we just had to wait. And of course, my mom, she's expecting us at 10 o'clock or whatever. And
of course,
she's freaking out. So she calls her friend, the fire department chief.
Yep.
And so immediately we hear all these, cops and people, and they're calling out to us on the loudspeakers, and we can't, we're way out into the woods. They can't find us. They're searching for us. They have the search parties going back and forth.
Before cell phones.
Before cell phones, right? And so we end up sitting there. We're terrified. And can you imagine? You're sitting there, and every little twig branch, you're thinking a bear's just going to come, and you're just sitting on fresh meat in the middle of Alaska.
This is our last day.
Yeah, this is our last day. So it was pretty funny. So eventually we were able to communicate with them through, they said, hey, if you're okay, fire 2 shots. And if you're not, fire 1. So we were able to fire 2 shots, and they left. And so we walked out at 7 or 8 in the morning, and it was just a cool story of sleeping on ducks in Alaska. And I got to miss school that next day because we were lost in the woods.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that's not a story many people have.
Right. Yeah, so that was growing up in Juneau, Alaska. So
very cool. Very cool. So then you said you went to school and then ended up coming back to Midwest. What did you study?
So I studied actually finance and Japanese, dual major at the University of Notre Dame.
Very cool.
And so that kind of gave me a financial background that kind of led to I ended up being, interesting. There's a lot of little detours in that story, but just based on my experience going to another country in Japan, you kind of say, hey, what else can I do that's kind of risky and stirring the pot? So after the University of Notre Dame, I went to do it's a program very similar to Teach for America. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't.
It's basically where they try to get, and it was run through the University of Notre Dame, and it's called Alliance for Catholic Education. Okay. And basically they try to get qualified teachers into inner city schools. And so I basically was a teacher in inner city LA. Kind of volunteer, you got paid, but you lived in a MTV style real world house with 6 other teachers, and you kind of experienced that. So I got a education degree. I was going to be a teacher, and I was like, and it was kind of back and forth, and that's when I got married and ended up moving back to the Midwest doing finance and
Okay. So what landed in finance? What was your first gig?
So basically, I did a little teaching gig for for-profit education, kind of like Kaplan Learning Centers, but I was in banking.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of went very similar to what my wife was working for a real estate developer.
Okay.
And I said, hey, can I have coffee with them?
Yeah.
And I just basically said, hey, if you were me and you want to be you in 15 years, what would you do? He's like, go work for a bank.
Yeah.
So
I love those conversations.
It totally
like
was.
you've gotten somewhere. I want to know how that happened so I could
Yeah.
just do the same thing.
It totally is. Yeah. So I just ended up talking to him, and he said, hey, work for a bank. And he actually had a bank that he was familiar with, who happened to have a head who was a Notre Dame alum. So I was ended up being an analyst, and just doing the
working your way through the
working
momentum.
through the finance thing. Yeah.
Yep. So what caused that to come to an end? Obviously,
So
that's not where you are now.
No,
so.
the collapse, the
Okay.
financial collapse. So basically, they let go all their seasoned finance guys, the loan officers,
Okay.
and all the young guys. They stuck around, and we basically were like workout specialists that were more or less, trying to work out all the bad loans, and then after that, we worked ourselves out of
Worked yourself out of a job.
And that was a real interesting, from a spiritual perspective, was just terrifying. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that was kind of the
Very
transition
different.
to, all right, start swinging the hammer, go make it happen. And that was where the real work began. And
Interesting. Yeah. So spiritual journey. So did you always have a faith growing up? Were your parents spiritual? Like,
Yeah.
what did that look like?
yeah, I would say that I was blessed in that regard. Like I always had, there was a point where it was mine,
Okay.
and so that was kind of a whole nother story, but it was pretty much, tested through a lot of life experience, but I think I was always there, so I think that's been the story through my life, is growing in that faith, which I'm sure is very similar to a lot of the
Yep.
listeners here. So.
Well, and in the Midwest, there's a lot of every church always has mission trips and youth trips and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's so many places we can go because there's stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm curious, in Alaska, did you guys do the same kind of thing? Did you go to different mission trips, or was it fairly local, like church was church?
It's funny. So I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
And I went to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Very Catholic. But when I was at Notre Dame, we had a more ecumenical kind of non-denominational branch that served a lot of the non-Catholic students.
Okay.
And so I was involved in the leadership. That's where I met my wife.
Oh, cool.
And it was kind of like, they call it interfaith Christian night prayer.
Yeah.
And we had these services, and I was able to get into some leadership where you just lead, little Bible study group, worship, that kind of stuff. And that's where that kind of started for me, is owning it. You're kind of like, hey, you ever question, like, why do I believe what I believe? Like, is it just following the rules? There's got to be something crazy here.
Something deeper.
Something deeper. It's funny. So, and I don't know if a lot of people who grew up Catholic, they think that it's just a set of rules and you got to follow it. And I was like, it just doesn't make sense, and all this rigidity. I kind of wonder what's real. Like, what does the church really feel? And so I started digging in, kind of like a CEO. You're like, what's really going on
What's
here?
what's the thing beneath the thing?
Yeah, what's the thing? And so you start reading. It's really cool. You start reading some of the papal encyclicals, the letters the popes write, and you start reading it, and it sounds just like a ecumenical Protestant kind of letter. And you're like, oh my gosh, at the heart, the Catholic faith is just like the Protestant faith, and the core tenets and issues and important things are all identical.
I was just talking about this the other day. Like I studied theology in college.
Oh, you did? Cool.
So in that, by nature of going, originally I was going to go into church work. I'm obviously not in that now, but you kind of have to know a lot about all the other religions to be able to speak to them and be able to disciple and everything like that. And it's amazing when you really get to know the foundation beneath all of them.
Yeah.
There's so much similarity in the basic principles that carry most faiths. And so you look at all of the different sects in Christianity, whether it's Catholicism or, Presbyterian or Baptist, there's so much similarity that we don't realize. And so I think that a lot of the arguments come from a lot of the stuff that's so surface that we've chosen to hand pick out that, yes, that's different. But at the core, we're all very similar. Like I'm part of a group called Tres Dias, which is Northern Illinois Tres Dias, and it's a big community of believers that are from all the local churches. I think the last weekend I went on, there were like 19 different churches represented. Yeah. And there's I was listing some of them: Presbyterian, Baptist, non-denominational, Church of God, and we all are basically focused on what does the Bible say, and what is what does it mean to walk with Jesus? And what does it mean to live out that principle from the Bible? And I think we're all aimed at that same thing.
Yeah.
And inside the church, we get lost in some of the traditional stuff that we've added to give it its own flavor. So yeah, I'm with you. Like when you really dig into it, there's a lot of similarities to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I felt like I didn't necessarily reject the Catholic faith. I was just, this faith fits more similar to my wife and I's kind of faith. And that's kind of where we, but ultimately kind of it's more about how you live it out. And the people who live it out in a very similar way. And it doesn't all the rigor and rigidity of the culture of a denomination just fall away, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. So what did your wife study?
So she was at Notre Dame. She did American Studies.
Oh, cool.
We joke it's the MRS degree. It's the, but no, she was real into social justice and some of those types of things. But yeah, we ended up, getting married, and she stays at home. She works at our company and does
awesome.
the accounting and bookkeeping. So
that's awesome.
Traditional kind of husband and wife.
Yes. So market crashes, you got to start swinging hammers. So what's the pivot? What was the next introduction? Walk through that, because that's a big shift.
Yeah, I would say, a lot of business owners know this feeling is you're jumping in the water and you're neck deep, and it's just survival.
Yeah.
And it's a real humbling place to be, because I found myself most reliant on my faith at that point. That's when you're so desperate. And the irony is it was at the very moment I was actually, we have 5 kids. First 2 are biological. The last 3 are adopted. And the middle one was adopted from Ethiopia. And right during this adoption process, it was like a 2-year process. That's when I got let go from the bank. And they basically said,
because that's not an inexpensive process
it's
either.
not. Well, and the thing is, I was so terrified, because I'm like, this poor kid I'm going to save him from Ethiopia, and he's going to starve to death in America. And it was terrifying. I mean, it was literally, you're like, I'm a failure, and I don't, and it was kind of at that point where you just kind of have to just hands up and just like, all right, I didn't feel like I did anything wrong at the bank. I was faithful. There's a little bit of that corporate culture that I really didn't like. I love the freedom of having my own business and not have to cater to that politics. But it was really, I don't say a test. It was just, do you trust me?
Yeah.
This hurts. I'm ripping the Band-Aid off, but you didn't do anything. This is not a punishment or a kind of a discipline. This is just, hey, follow me here. And it was terrifying. And so I went from wearing a suit and tie every day to literally, going online and trying to get people to go into their house to change their light bulbs or install a dishwasher or, just handyman stuff, and just to survive, to make ends meet. And that's really was the beginning of a construction bit, just grinding. I mean, hours and hours, 12-hour days for months on end.
Did you ever have a moment that you were mad at God?
That's a great question. I never was mad. I always doubted myself.
Okay.
It's like, hey, I felt like a failure. I felt like I had everything. I had, almost the ideal upbringing, upper middle class. Dad's a dentist in Alaska. I've had all these great life experiences, go to great school, all these things that I should be a success. And here I am, with a child from Ethiopia that I can't even feed, I feel like. And again, none of these things are true.
Yeah.
And you just say, hey, what's going on here? What is God showing me through this? And that's kind of, I'm very interested in where the rubber meets the road, the real journey, the hard stuff. It's not like the fluff, like, incorporate God into your mission statement. And it's like, okay, when things suck, where
that's
does it
the
happen?
test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you about?
Yeah.
And I think I would say that moment, and it was funny because I remember a very poignant moment when I was sitting in the parking lot of the bank, and I just sensed things were kind of wrapping up. There was probably 6 months where I said, any day now, they're just going to.
Just waiting.
Yeah, and and it was a whole department, but it was like I knew we were just toast. And I just said, hey, Lord, if this is your will, I'm cool with it. And that really tests kind of whether you believe it or not.
It does.
Yeah. And can you not freak out?
Yeah.
I think everybody who's an entrepreneur knows that sinking feeling, like, what do I do? How do I make?
Yeah. What's next? Well, it's almost dizzying, right? Like there's moments where you're like, it's hard to even have clear thought. So Like even like now, like when there's things that are overwhelming or there's a lot going on, or there's, 13 different things that pop up in the same day, prayer is where I start now.
Yeah.
I did not do that years ago when I was much younger, right? And so when you're in the middle of that, but I look back and everything that I went through when in the moment, I'm like, why? Like, what am I supposed? I look back and I go, oh, I get it now, right? I know, and so now it's easier because I've, you and I both have life experiences where God has carried us through them.
Yeah.
And so I find that as the days continue, it gets easier for me to be able to, in those moments, say, all right, God, what lesson am I supposed to learn in this? And it's so much more powerful in making a decision, taking the step forward, figuring out what I'm supposed to do versus kind of getting overwhelmed by it and shutting down, right? And I think that's huge for people to hear.
You know what's funny is what really helped in the process, because there was the whole burden of bringing another kid and supporting him, and then you lose kind of your legs essentially. But when we went over there, a really cool thing that I think God showed me was kind of perspective of resources, or where I felt like I was destitute and I was going to be completely starving and alone. When we went to Ethiopia, it was just a whole different paradigm of poverty. Yeah. And you go in there and you're just like, there's literally, because there's the main city, Addis Ababa is kind of where we kind of hung out, but the outskirts, and we went to this trash slum where people literally just like on your National Geographic channel, barefoot, belly sticking out, all this stuff. And the funny thing is I felt I was becoming poor in America, like I was going to somehow follow this social ladder of just the economic. I want to be at retirement, and here I'm going the wrong direction. Yeah. In just a week or two of being there, your brain starts to reacclimate to kind of what the norms are there. And so I found myself, so we stayed in this little guest house, and it was kind of like a humble, gated little, suburbia. Okay. And they have to be gated because there's so much crime there. Yeah. But it was humble house. But then there's kind of houses on the hill that were like the construction owners and these big businesses. So there was definitely wealth there. Yeah. And, in a week, I found myself longing for like, hey, if only we had that house up on the hill. If only we were in that neighborhood. And from an objective standpoint, our humble neighborhood in McHenry, Illinois was 10 times better than that. And yet I felt like that's where my ambition was.
Life's a matter of perspective.
Well, and so what it showed me was like my perception of success, failure, provision, or resource was all relative.
Yeah, it is.
And it's
entirely.
Like, so I'm like, if I were to get that house, and my house that I was living in, that I was afraid of like not surviving in, was plunked into Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, I would be rich. I would be rich beyond. And I was like, okay, this is just no matter where I am, the scale always moves. The goalposts always change. Does. And so I was able to just kind of say, stop, stop chasing this, constant goalpost changing thing. And basically that gave me kind of the peace, like no matter what happens, we're going to be fine. We have so much resource in this country. It's not even funny.
Oh yeah.
We're never
Our worst day here, we're still light years above that, which is crazy, right? Well, and it reminds me of a book that impacted me quite a bit early in my career, The Gap and the Gain, where it talks about how important it is to stop focusing on the gap between now and your next goal, but the gain in the journey you've taken so far. And having those reflection moments where you look back and go, I have really put a lot into this, and I'm seeing the fruits of those labors. And I've moved the next goal, which is why I still haven't gotten there yet. And stop focusing on how you're short of the next thing, but how far you've come, right? And I think a lot of people forget that the further into their career they get. And so one little hiccup feels like, oh my God, life's over. And really, you've come a long ways. Like don't let that fall off, and don't let that move out of the field of vision. And I think that's a good example of where that perspective is really important, because you're comparing it to what you're exposed to, right? If you live in this little bubble, that's all you have to look at. Back up for a second. It's bigger than that.
Do you feel, and I feel like this is probably relatable to a lot of people when they're listening to this, or it's almost like the worst case fear is not real. It's the boogeyman in the closet, because if you just take a step back and you say, okay, let's just say I got hurt on the job. I can't work, I can't do anything, and I'm completely destitute, and I got 5 kids and all this stuff. In our current situation in America, you're gonna have family, friends, support, all these things. You're gonna survive. You're not gonna be worried about the food in your belly.
Yep.
Like most of the world.
Yeah.
And worst case, let's say you do starve and you die. For us as Christians, it's really hard to say, okay, then I'm in eternal bliss.
Yeah.
And it's perfect.
I'm okay with that.
And I'm okay. So when you're afraid of the boogeyman, it really paralyzes you to like make really good, sound decisions on life that are based on people, based on spirit. And you say, okay, if you can just say as a business, your worst case is you're profitable and your worst case is you're happy.
Yeah.
It just kind of frees you from all of that burden of, I'm a failure. I'm going backwards. I'm not achieving anything.
Yeah.
You still want to have all those goals, kind of the ambitions of an entrepreneur. But it's like when you can free yourself from the worst case fears, it's the fear of the boogeyman that's bigger than it really is.
It really is. Well, and that's where the enemy steps in and it tries to get your perspective to live in fear. That is the number one place that the enemy wants you to be, because that's what's going to slow you down. That's what's going to freeze you up and prevent you from moving forward.
Yeah.
And then when you figure out how to not let that captivate you, the other place the enemy goes, because it's the only place he's got left, is make you so busy you get distracted.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you figure out how to minimize those and realize when the enemy's doing that, it really can create a little bit less stress in life and realize like there's priorities that we need to figure out. And I was thinking about this morning, like a lot of business owners start their day and it's, okay, what do I have to do today?
Yeah.
And so you've created your own stress with that question.
Yeah.
It's, what do I get to do today?
Yeah.
Make the decision of how you're going to spend your time. Kind of like with the work-life balance. Like, are there things that I get to do that are business related that are going to impact my client, my people, the marketplace, or do I get to spend time with my kids today? I get to leave at 2 today because there's a baseball game that I'm going to go to watch my kids. Like get to versus have to. And then when you start your day and look at the to-do list, like, what do I get to do today? And what's important and what's the top priority and what moves the needle towards the purpose that God has us serve, the purpose my business is supposed to be in, the place that I'm supposed to live in to impact that overall place. And I think that that's where a lot of business owners struggle early when it's overwhelming. It's just them. They're like, everything falls on my shoulders. Well, you are He-Man in your own mind, but the reality of it is you can't carry it all. Let God carry it, and it's a lot easier to then live it out, right? And I think there's a lot to that. So how long were you solo in the construction world? Like, how long did it take you to start getting some momentum to actually start adding people or start subbing out work? And what did that look like?
Yeah, no, it was a couple of years of grind, and it was terrifying. And then I think what happened was, I had a friend from church, a really good close friend. And I was starting to get, remodel jobs, real basic stuff. And then I kind of said, hey, I need a little more horsepower. And that's where I said, hey, my friend was in another job, and I said, hey, would you be interested in kind of making this transition, but not do it, kind of flippantly and just haphazardly. So we did this kind of test. Let's work a couple weekends for several months and just kind of get a transition. So he eventually worked out really well, and it was just a tag team. We went off and, kind of the horsepower and synergy of 2 people going out and swinging the hammer. Huge difference motivationally. And so we just jumped in and totally got in over our head and just started doing jobs that we had no business doing, but you fake it till you make it, right? It's kind of and that's really where it kind of kickstarted. And we started doing remodels, and then we just dove into commercial completely recklessly. And ended up doing.
Which is natural. I mean, that's the next progression is
totally
once you got enough momentum going, it's like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you get into it and you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah, totally in over head.
So that's your current business partner, right?
Yep. Current business partner.
Very cool. How big's the staff now?
So we have 10 total,
Very cool.
including some office. So we got like 6 to 8 guys in the field, depending. And a couple of those guys are flex guys. And so we try to, that's how we adapt to a lot of the ebb and flow of horsepower versus pipeline. So that's kind of how we've adapted to that. It's just get a lot of flex guys that can do both.
So how many years ago was that to now?
I want to say
you're now sitting on 18, 9 or 17.
I was kind of handyman it for a couple of years, from like 2010 to 2012, and then we formally incorporated. So we're almost 14, 15 years roughly as in the current form with the business partner.
Very cool. And what's your role today?
So I am president. So I
Okay.
basically do all the office. So I lead the estimating. We have an estimator, and I do all the accounting. Well, my wife helps with the accounting, but I just all the legal, insurance, business stuff, banking, all that kind of stuff, and then obviously estimating and business planning and stuff. So that's kind of my role. And then my business partner, he's our director of construction. He runs everything in the field, and he's got
cool.
his superintendent under him, and then all the field guys that operate. And so it's kind of like we get the deal, we book it, and then we send it off to them, and then they
Nice. Execute.
execute.
Very cool. What's the plan for the future?
That's a great question. We're always in discussions about that.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of ebb and flow and
Of course.
and tug. So I'd say that's been our biggest challenge is the partnership, is to say, hey, where do we want to go?
Mm-hmm.
And that really opens up kind of the fundamental questions of every person. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Why are we here?
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going? And I think that fundamental question, depending on who the person is,
Mm-hmm.
changes. So I think you have to answer that for you. All the business owners, like, what's the point of all this? And so
Yeah.
that's what we're working through now. I think we have an idea. We want to kind of grow.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest part of that is just impact for our families, impact for our employees, impact for the kingdom. That's the purpose.
Yep.
But how it plays out has been interesting.
You don't even have a clue.
Yeah, right,
It's
right.
just some of that's faith, right? And just believing that God will step in and make some of those decisions clear
Yeah.
that you can't see yet.
Yeah.
And what's funny, like I talk to my kids about this all the time, like now might not be the time we're supposed to know anyway. Like,
Right.
and that's okay. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those, God's timing is not our timing.
Yeah.
And we need to believe that more and
Yeah.
realize that, okay, there's things that are in front of me right now that God has put there for a reason.
Yeah.
And whether it's a lesson that I need to be learned or
Yeah.
somebody else's life that I'm supposed to change, like that's what's here. But, and I obviously, as a fractional CEO, I'm always telling people we do have to think about 10 years.
Yeah.
Because if the decisions that we're making have a very different way of approaching them, but both seem valuable,
Yeah.
which one aligns with the long-term
Yeah.
plan? Like, and where are we supposed to be headed with this thing? So that as we're doing this, we're efficient in the way that we're making the individual steps. So we don't get six steps in, have to circle back and redo something that got us off track.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do. But it's also one of those where the underlying mission, vision, and purpose, like I talk in Ephesians about spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
And when I first started like really digging into them, I really had this moment where God made it clear how they really do align with our place in the market. And there's a group that I got recently introduced to that does a lot with like the college community.
Yeah.
And the main goal is to drive the importance of being active in ministry.
Yeah.
But I see an underlying piece that could bring value to a lot of the college kids of God can come with you into the marketplace, even if it's not in a church, even if you're not in a ministry role. You can work in a regular business in the market that isn't part of a church or isn't part of a religious organization and still have God present in the way that you operate and the things that you do. And so I think there's a lot of importance to doing that and doing it well, but knowing how to bring those two together where it's done with intention, right? But so thinking about the growth over the last period together, what's the biggest challenge that you and your partner have had along the way? Like, what's the biggest word you were like, I don't know if this is going to work out? Like, there had to be a day.
So as you were talking, I was just thinking of kind of the whole partnership thing, because I think a lot of business owners will say, hey, what are we doing? And say a Christian business owner, how is our business impacting our customers and, incorporation in the community?
Yeah.
And I think one thing we lose sight of, here's the lesson I've really learned, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it's been a grind, is that partnership. I would say if God put me on this earth and you say, who are the people you're closest to and you have the most impact on, it's not going to be this periphery vendor, maybe your employees, it's your family and your partner.
100%.
And what I've learned in the last couple of years, especially as we've really grounded out, is we've really had to test what is it that we're here for? And is it the partnership, is the impact on that person as opposed to my ambition in the business?
Yeah.
And I would say that's the biggest sacrifice I've had to really grapple with is I have this expectation up here of where the business is going in the 10-year. I'm very like mechanical. Here's our 10-year plan, our growth and our exit and all the processes. And I really had to have God kind of say, hey, settle down a second. Who's involved? Who are you impacting? And it was more about, am I prioritizing that relationship, even to the detriment of my own ambition? I think that's the hardest part that I've had to learn, is that I've said, okay, if this business is really about glorifying God, if I step on my partner or conflict with my partner in a way that dishonors God and causes him to say, I hate that guy, or this guy is just dragging me through to his goals, it's almost like you have to say, what is it that you really believe? Is it that the end point of your business is what's going to happen and whatever you have to do to get there? Or is it, no, there's actually God's purpose, and it may not include the business success as you defined it?
Yeah.
Are you willing to do that?
Yeah.
And I would say that's probably been the hardest part, is, hey, am I prioritizing? I feel like God has put that partner in my life for a reason, and has challenged me to sacrifice my underlying assumptions and ambitions of my own desires to say, am I willing to, for his sake, kind of surrender some things for that partnership?
Well, I think it reminds me of servanthood.
Yeah.
And I see that apply very heavily in partnerships, because you enter it with this great, fun, loving idea.
Yeah.
And then it gets real at some point.
Yeah.
Where, okay, we're not 100% on the same page on everything. And I think anybody who thinks that that's the reality of two random people partnering in anything is just, you're crazy. Like, it's just not going to happen. You're going to run into a hiccup. I'm actually currently working with two financial advisors that are looking to come together as a team.
Yeah.
And they're both successful. They're both faith-based. They're both really good dudes. And the reason they brought me in is, like, somebody's got to force the conversation of, like, so what happens if? How are we going to handle that? Like, the reality of it is you're going to have some stuff hit you sideways. And the idea of waiting for that day to come to then have the conversation when you're both emotionally charged is a really bad idea. Like, while you're both in a good mood and you both get along and we aren't in front of a fire, like, let's have the conversation about the things that typically happen in the industry space that you live in, and what happens when two people decide to partner in something that is going to continue to grow and get bigger. When those issues come and you've already kind of set the framework of the way that we're going to handle it, then you can handle it with dignity. Then you can handle it with a little more preparation. If you don't, the only way I've seen success is servanthood. How can I bless you in the process? And when you do it that way, God reaps the rewards, right? Like, at the end of the day, because you do it with a different purpose. You're not being selfish. You're not being blinded. And you're realizing that there's a bigger thing than both of us. And I just need to put my pride away for a second and realize that, like, sacrifice is part of what we're called to do. It's in Scripture, right? Which, on the flip side, I think a lot of people have taken that too far. We're like, oh, well, you're a very profitable business. Well, if I'm super profitable, I also can give back to a lot of people. So there is something about a really good, successful business that allows us to continue to pour into God's kingdom. And let's not miss that.
Well, I wonder if people, if it's real, are you willing to sacrifice even the success? Because I think all CEO-minded people, as long as it ends in success, I'm willing to try anything or go along with any script. And I think that's the ultimate challenge as a really Christian is, like, what am I really willing to let go? Can I let go of my financial security, that like ambition of retirement and comfort, and I've worked hard and now I put it away. Can I give that up? And it's like, I don't know if you got, one fascinating, the Chosen, have you seen that?
I have.
That series. The coolest thing is I watched those guys, the apostles, getting recruited. And do you ever ask yourself, like, would I actually say yes? Would I drop everything if Jesus is right there in front of you? Would you really do it? And if so, if you can't do that in that way, what would it look like today? Like, what would giving up everything to actually follow him look like? And that's the scariest thing as a business owner. It's like, that's where you're really like, would I give up my retirement, my future comfort, my security, and I know what the next 20 years looks like? And that's really the challenge that I think I struggle with on a day-to-day basis is, like, okay, in serving this partner, in serving this business, and serving my family, am I willing to give that up? Because I hold so tightly to as a finance guy. I mean, you're like, I need to know the numbers. I got a 12-month cushion. I got all this stuff. And it's all towards a future ambition, a future expectation. And if that's what you have, if that's what Christ is saying, hey, if you remove that security, now all you have is me. It's kind of like that. You're following.
Okay,
Yeah.
I guess we're doing this.
It is, and then you really appreciate what the first followers of Jesus did. I mean, they left everything.
Everything. Well, and now let's even take I love that you brought that up, because think about that. Like, we know Jesus because of the Bible, and we've read all the things, we've had all the discussions, and it's behind us, so it's easier to see.
Yeah.
If some dude said that he was God's son, walking around the earth and just like did some pretty cool stuff, like, would you really buy in? Yeah. Ooh, that's a whole different ballgame. Like that's legit. That's in the moment. You don't have history to bounce off of. You're living right there.
Yeah.
So the fact that they did what they did and that they followed him, but you hear that they fell, they made mistakes, they turned their back, and then we see the byproduct of that.
Right.
And they're all lessons that we got to learn from that allow us to realize, like, there are times in our life that we don't really realize how parallel it is. And when we do, it's really impactful from an emotional standpoint that makes you think a little bit different. And to the finance point, like, when I was going through our journey, we were like very similar to when you had the third child enter your life and life hit you sideways. Yeah. Like, my first son, his first birthday party was done at our house with just family coming over, and we couldn't afford to do it. Yeah. That's how broke we hit by some bad decisions. And so I've been there, right? And so there's a moment where you kind of realize, like, we're not doing something right. And so, over the years after that, we went through Dave Ramsey's FPU curriculum and really changed the way we looked at money. And when we incorporated biblical principles into the financial side of our life, you have to be a balanced effort of serving God's kingdom, being intentional about the future, but also using that to be able to be sufficient with today. Yeah. And so when you do that well and follow the way God calls us to do that on the financial side, that stewardship principle rolls over into everything.
Right.
It's the same thing with your time. Are you giving time to your employees sufficiently to be able to lift them up? Are you giving time to your wife and kids sufficiently? Are you giving God time on the front end? Or does God get the time that's left over? Right. And man, when you look back at the seasons, the times where you made prayer a priority, you made getting into the word a priority, life was a lot clearer during that period. Yeah. And then when things were coasting, you kind of forgot about that. Yeah. So prayer cut back and things got in the way. And then all of a sudden it got foggy again. And then you pulled prayer back out. And it's like this cycle that you created. Just put God first, and the rest of it starts to make a lot more sense, right? Yeah. And then the finances are easier to manage. Like, it's like, well, this is what God wants me to do. I hear it. Done, right? Yeah. And then it works out. And so we've been blessed in that regard. And I think a lot of people who start to realize that, it gets easier by nature of you're not driving anymore.
Yeah.
You move over to the passenger seat, God takes the steering wheel, and it's like, actually, I can see the scenery now. Like,
well, what's funny? One thing that we're learning too in our business, we have this conversation, and the nice thing with a partner, you have to be equally yoked in the faith, because we are like yin and yang. We have totally different skill sets, which is great. But the one thing that I really appreciate about our partnership is, on a fundamental level, we both can kind of humbly come back and say, we're broken. We're unable to do this ourselves. And we both kind of appeal to God. And that's when our most cherished moments are. Awesome. Of just being like, okay, we may not agree on anything. Yep. We think our wiring is completely diametrically opposite. You know? But then we both say we trust in God. And the funny thing we've noticed is there's this kind of like cheat card, this trump card that no matter what we do and plan and isolate and all, really mechanically lay out everything, it's almost like there's a maximum that it can achieve. Yep. And then God can just kind of step in and like overrule everything and basically give you like connections and opportunities that you have no business doing. Yeah. And it's almost like he's just waiting for you to align with each other. Yeah. And then he's going to overcome everything that you couldn't do on your own. Yeah. And it's almost like when you're in that sweet spot, that's what it's kind of like where I want to call it magic. It's not really magic. It's the Holy Spirit, but it's like, that's when the excitement happens. Yeah. And it's almost like, instead of trying to have all this real structured plan, all I got to do is just be in a space where God can work his what he does best.
Well, if you try to make it too detailed, you fill in all the gaps so much, there's not room for God. Yeah. And so and I think God wants us to have a general plan, understand the purpose, and have an idea of the general things that we need to keep moving forward so that he can participate in it. But when we get too fixated on detailing every little iota out and creating all the map for the next 10 years and all the little things, but the day that we finally realize, like, okay, we got a little bit too over the top here, God goes, okay, that was cute. Like, can I help you now? Like, and then you finally take the eraser out and take some stuff off the page. And all right, now we can work with something. Because you're right. Like, I think we get a little bit too specific sometimes where we create boundaries that aren't meant to be there.
Yeah.
And when you let that go, God can really lift a lot of things up tenfold. Like, and I've seen it in multiple businesses I've worked with. I've seen it in my own business, my own life, and all that. But I'm curious, you've had a fun journey. Your partner's obviously a big part of your life, and it's been an evolution that is a pretty good mountain to be on now that's still going, right? Walk me through your wife through that. I know for me, like, that was my rock that kept me aligned. But not everybody has that same journey. Like, what was it like at home with her? And then obviously you added 2 more since this started. Right. So walk through the personal side of things. Like, what did that look like at home, and how she obviously works in the business now. That changed at some point. So walk through that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point that we went into business, we knew it was going to be a challenge, but you have the freedom to just kind of ebb and flow. If I need to be home for the kids or whatever, you have that freedom. So that was the number one impact on my wife, is like choosing a business or a path that allowed me to not be locked into a 8 to 12 hour day away from the house in an office where I can't do anything not business related, or it's all personal is separate. Yep. And so that was choice number one, but that comes with a huge, huge burden, because she, more than me, is financially just got to have all the chickens in a row and all the, you know, the cushions. And so that's been the biggest challenge, is the provision to where she feels like she can take care of the kids in the way she knows, because for her, it's like, do we have money for cheer? Do we have money for tumbling? Do we have money for soccer? And all these things. Yep. And she's on it. Like, she knows all the ins and outs of the money situation. So I think that's been the biggest challenge, is giving her some sense of, we've got this, because she needs to feel like I don't have to worry about taking care of the kids. Yeah. And so that's been a big challenge. So that's where she actually participated. She was working for somewhere else. Like, honey, you got to come in and help us build this thing and be a part of it. And then she understands it. She kind of can feel it more on a day-to-day basis. Are we doing good? And it's good and bad, because it's bad. Like,
there's pros and cons to that.
All these payables, like, honey, chill. We got all the receivables to back it up. But I think she definitely likes being involved. But at the same time, I'm a risk taker. I love the game. I love the ups and downs and the challenge and the competition. She's just wants everything plain, simple, secure, stable, and that's really the balance as an entrepreneur, is letting the wife feel secure, but still enjoying the game and taking risks. So
I go through the same thing, and she knows that I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that we're taken care of, and she's seen it happen enough over the years that the faith is there that God will take care of us, and that we will be able to get to where God intended. But there's also my wife is very much like stability. Likes the, like, I just want to know. I know we're good. Just tell me what we have to work with, and I'll make it happen. Right. But she definitely helps balance me out, and where I know where I if I was single, I'd be going even further with risk, right? But I know I have to kind of dial it back just a little bit, just because there is something to that. So moving forward, are you guys like currently hiring? Are you like, what's your goal, or who should be looking for you, or who do you want to know that you're out there?
Yeah, on a commercial basis, it's kind of funny, because we don't put signs on our trucks or anything. We don't like
you keep a low key profile.
Yeah. You don't, especially you don't want people stealing your tools and stuff.
Yep.
But, I would say construction is very interesting, because it's a lot of ebb and flow. And I would say this past 6 months prior, like around the new year, was really tough for everybody. It was just, things slowed down. You had tariffs, you had shutdowns, you had
everything
wars,
was in chaos,
and everything slows down, and you kind of get choked out. And then all of a sudden, the last 2 months, everybody wants everything done yesterday. So it's almost like we went from nothing to too much. And so we're kind of in that real delicate balance of needing skilled guys, but being able to perform. Yeah. But you don't want to overload either. So it's, in construction, I don't know if it's the same in your business before, but it's just balancing pipeline and horsepower. And so
it is
looking for people that can be flexible and do both. but those are hard to find, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the biggest struggle for us financially, and just execution.
That is the hard part. I work with a number of different firms that are in various construction spaces, and it is definitely a challenge to figure that out, because you also, and I think that you and your partner probably have this heart, like, I don't want to bring guys on that I might have to lay off, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of owners are very cognizant of that. And so, but finding that perfect needle of the flex guy that has enough other connections where no matter what, he'll always have stuff to do.
Yeah.
Man, that's harder and harder to find these days.
It
It just, because they're probably running their own business at this point and they don't need to sub for you.
It really is. Yeah, it really is.
So it does change things. Yeah. Well, and then there's the value system, right? Like, you guys obviously bring faith into the way you lead.
Yeah.
Not every business owner in construction, I would say the minority do, not the majority, right? And so it's a different work environment.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it increase, but I think there's a ways for it to become a flip over to the majority, which I'm praying that happens someday, because that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Right. But that's just the nature of where the market's at.
Yeah.
So if somebody did want to try to find you because they feel like, I'd love to work for that guy,
Yeah.
how do they find you? Where do they go? Website, LinkedIn, Facebook? Like, where do you
I'm on
guys, where do you
LinkedIn,
exist?
Also just, glacierconstruction.com.
Perfect.
Glacier-construction.com, I guess. But
Awesome.
that's kind of where we're at. But, I think I like to make personal connection. I usually don't just get a cold call and say, hey, I want to work for you. You got usually like the guy that, hey, I know a guy who knows a guy.
I know a guy.
Because there's a lot of, trust in that layer. I'm sure a lot of business owners, because it's a pretty intimate working environment. I think we value the culture very strongly. We don't want any kind of bad apples that, basically drag the whole thing down. And we work really
100%.
hard to get to that point where people enjoy working. I mean, it's funny. Construction is like the lowest hanging fruit. Like, where can you make an impact for the kingdom? I mean, 'cause there's some industries like construction where, don't swear at your people, don't yell at them, don't kick them while they're in the field, and scream at them, and that's, I think, part of what we're trying to do for spiritually, personally. That all aligns with what I think God wants for us, as a business. So
There's something to that, right?
Yeah.
Well, and you get to be a part of not just building something tangible, but building up leaders in the marketplace and like people that get to carry that forward. Like, at some point, your day is gonna come, and then the team that you built behind you is still gonna be working, right?
Yeah.
And so there is something to. I've always enjoyed that mindset of realizing that there's generations inside of every house.
Yeah.
And those lower generations, they're going to become what you fostered by nature of the way that you chose to lead. And so if you can be intentional with making sure that you're doing things ethically with integrity, and where it's, and you, like I said, when we first sat down before we even got started, like, you don't have to throw Bibles at people. You don't have to be quoting scripture every day, but the way you operate, I heard this statement a long time ago. I don't want anybody to ever find out that I'm a Christian and be shocked by it. Right. And so if the way that you operate, suddenly somebody goes, oh yeah, and he's got a huge faith. Yeah, I could see that is the response. You're doing something right. Like that should just make sense, not be surprising. And I think that if we live that in everywhere that we go, that says something. That builds the right foundation and gets people to kind of follow and realize that there's something to that, and that it's got a warm and fuzzy to it versus
the
other way around.
When you said that, one kind of lesson I just was really impactful for me as a business owner. So my dad passed away about 10 years ago from cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he was a dentist, really involved in the community, had this whole network of Rotary clubs and all this stuff, and patients and contact, as he was kind of slowly deteriorating, and we had this beautiful opportunity to kind of be with him. It was funny because he went to Seattle where he gets better treatment, and the whole family, we had 6 total in our family, 4 kids, and we were all like literally sleeping in the hospital room, and just spent a week just reminiscing and stuff. And as he's kind of slowly passing away, and what I realized is, for all the great things he did and all the involvement in the business and all this stuff, the people that were with him at the end, and where the real impact was the people that God put right next to him, his family, and basically that core, like the closest inner circle. And had he been unfaithful in that arena, it would have been like the biggest travesty. He could have been the best impact in the community, but nobody in the community was there in his hospital bed. When he passed away, people went to his funeral and honored him for an hour or two out of their day.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, man, like the impact I'm going to have the most are the people, not the customers and all these periphery people. It's like, who are the 4 or 5 people that I'm their person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm their most, I'm the dad, I'm the partner, I'm the husband.
Yeah.
And if you abandon that, that's like, that to me is the focal point of everything.
100%.
Is yes, it's good to run the business, but it's like, who are the immediate people that if I walk off this earth tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
who are the 5 people? What are they going to say about me?
Yeah.
And that was really stunning for me to realize, like, oh, my dad had all these, community impact, and that meant a hill of beans. I mean, it was impactful for them, but in terms of like spiritually, the things that really matter. And so I felt like, as much as I want to use the business to impact kind of multiple people, and there's kind of tertiary benefit there and in kingdom, I take the burden away from, I have to make a huge difference to all these people in this business, impact my customers and rah from the hillside.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it really simplifies things. It says, hey, is my business about me and my partner, or is it about all this other stuff?
Yeah.
And that's where it makes decisions much simpler.
Yeah.
Is my business drawing me away from my kids? Well, if I'm on my deathbed in a hospital, they're not going to care about all the customers I impacted. They're going to be like, Dad, were you there for my baseball game? Honey, were you there when I said I need you home to drive the kids? And so I really kind of narrowed, like that unfortunate incident, losing my dad when he's 70 years old, but he worked his whole life to have this picture of retirement and this picture of driving around the country in an RV, and it was just taken from him.
Gone. Yeah.
And it's like he never had the chance to fulfill all the things that I stress over. It's like, I'm going to sacrifice now to have the life later. Well, that life may not be there. So if you don't figure out now the impact now and the people, the challenge for me is sometimes I will scorn the people closest to me to achieve some ambition. And you're just like, what am I doing?
As soon as it happens, you're like, nope, I got to fix that. I'm sorry, I screwed up. And
you're like,
because it stings.
Hey, these challenges in our partnership it's not the roadblock. It's kind of like, I feel like, I got in a disagreement with my partner. This is the roadblock to my ambition, and it's keeping me from getting to that early retirement, selling the business, and having all these operational efficiencies, all this stuff. And they're like, no. This is the purpose. Yeah. Like, this is the person that you can impact the most, who I can show you my way through your struggles with him. What do you have to give up? Yeah. What do you have to set aside?
What do you have to let go of?
Yeah. What are you going to have to surrender? Maybe I'm not calling you to be an apostle and walk away from everything, but you know what? I'm going to have you walk away from your easy retirement life, your cush, and it's like, ooh, that's hurt. That hurts really bad.
It's different, right? Well, and the reality of it is, it reminds me of the dilution effect. Like, if you try to be this massive impact on tens of thousands of people, you're probably going to impact very few of them.
Right.
Right. And so like my wife and I are
exactly what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Well, my wife and I are so aligned on the reality of like, God's first, my spouse is second, my kids are third, and everything else is beyond that. Right. Like, that's what God calls me to wrap my arms around. Yeah. Everything else is behind it. But it doesn't mean that I treat everything else like it's insignificant. Yeah. It's just a priority order. Like, if my wife needs me, it is going to beat just about anything. Yeah. And if my kids need me, it's going to be just about anything beyond that. Right. Yeah. And so, but when they're taken care of and I've met the needs that is there, I've got bandwidth to then support the next in line. Right. Yeah. And so then that's where it cascades into other areas and other people. And there's times where I get to have times in fellowship where I go out to breakfast with a guy that's hurting. Yeah. And there's, women at the church that need support. Like, we get to do those things. Yeah. By nature of, we're focused on the right priorities. Yeah. Right. And so, but if you try to just be this like awesome thing to everybody under the sun, nobody gets the bandwidth and nobody gets impacted. Yeah. Right. And so, it's a good reminder. I think that's a huge lesson that I think a lot of people could take a step back and go, what am I really prioritizing? Yeah. And where am I putting my time? Or is it getting so diluted that nothing is getting moved? And I'm just spinning wheels for the next 20 years.
It's just like a business. You're just like, what are your core competencies that run the whole ship? Whether it's like, for us, it's just going out, building stuff and getting paid. If we abandon that, we do all these side things, and it's the same thing. It's like, who are the 4 or 5 people that are going to be at your hospital bed. If
Yeah.
you're not if that's not what you're living for day to day, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Like you're going to be so diluted.
Yeah.
You'll be like a business that has 100 things going on and
Yeah.
you don't actually make a profit. Now this is not, it's more spiritual profit, but it's the same concept, it's just literally the same application.
It is. It is. But well, Jacob, this has been an honor and a pleasure to have you out.
That's cool.
This has been cool. It's been fun. I love how God leads these conversations and lets us dive into some fun stuff that who knows who it's going to hit, but that's the whole idea, right?
Yeah,
so thanks for coming. Thanks for watching Built on Purpose, episode 4. Jacob Cook, it's been a pleasure. Remember, God is leading your life if you let him, and if you don't, you're going to struggle. Until next time.